Dear God, it's about that time we get into the nitty-gritty parts of Persona, huh? Talking about Persona 4, there has been a discourse throughout the year ever since its 16-year release. It's a pretty controversial topic throughout the years, especially within the Western community. Of course it's the Western community, they're always upset with something. Look at the Japanese community, they're happy and they love Morgana a lot. Now this conversation has been debunked and proven wrong so many times, but as the years go on, there are newer and newer fans of Persona that will get the wrong idea about certain characters in Persona 4. That would be Naoto and Kanji. Especially those freaks on Twitter getting their dirty tainted hands on our beloved series, they seem to bring this whole thing up again. With the rise of the progressive ideology that you all know is very prevalent in today's times, which led to people miss the point of Kanji and Naoto's character arcs because they cling to representation so much that it blinds them. So why do they get the wrong idea? Something tells me that as the years go by, people stop taking education seriously. Reading and understanding ability has gone downhill. We're going to be talking about Kanji and Naoto's arc, what they actually mean, and why it is not about sexuality and gender identity. Let's talk about Kanji first because I've already finished Kanji's dungeon in my playthrough and I think this is within the realm of my understanding a lot. Not to say that I'm someone stupid when it comes to Naoto, but I, understand Kanji a lot. A lot of people mistook Kanji's arc to be him embracing his sexuality and that he is gay or something like that, but it's not. Kanji appears in the third dungeon in the Persona 4 playthrough. He is introduced as this delinquent, scary-looking, mean tough guy. The way he was introduced was that the news outlet in Inaba reported something about a biker gang and that it was beaten up by a single guy. That guy is Kanji. I mean, from the way he looks, he is very intimidating and looks like he's been getting dirty with his hands. Firstly, I think we need to know what Kanji's arc is about, what problems he is facing. All character arcs in Persona 4 are correlated with the game's theme of truth, which is something important to know and take notes on. The base of all arcs is literally facing the truth about yourself and accepting your true self. Kanji's arc is directly tied with the game's theme of truth because Kanji struggles a lot with masculinity and the insecurities that he is facing within himself. He struggles to face and be his true self. I say like it's something unique, but every character arc in this game is basically facing and accepting their true selves, but nonetheless, Kanji is facing insecurities and it's correlated with masculinity basically. Kanji's hobbies are things like sewing, knitting, arts and crafts. He's actually really adept and passionate with those hobbies. In the game, and I'm sure with a lot of people, those kinds of hobbies or activities are considered as things that are feminine. A lot of boys his age generally don't have interest in those things, especially in Japan during the 2000s. It's obviously going to have some negative connotations when you're into those things that are considered feminine when you're a boy. I feel like that's just really how things when you were younger, especially back in those days. I mean, in a way, it's still common now, but things like anime and liking certain things. Even though anime is becoming mainstream and more people are getting into it now, there are still negative connotations about guys liking things other than the shonen genre, for example. If we say we enjoy high school romance or we have a favorite waifu or something like that is not from a shonen anime, we'd get called incels, lonely, losers, and we should be put in jail. Some people deserve to be called those things, but since it's a common occurrence that guys who watch high school romance anime get called those things, people who are normal and consume it normally sometimes still get labeled by that. So it's a common thing that people are facing. Another problem that he is facing is the masculinity he himself portrays towards other people, which leaves him isolated. The way he looks and the way he acts makes a lot of misunderstood conceptions of him as a person. Because of the masculinity he portrays, people see him as a delinquent, dangerous, or a bully, which led to him feeling isolated. With the insecurities that he has about his hobbies, he developed a fear of rejection. He's scared about the feminine hobbies that he has, that his female peers will ridicule him and mock him. He explained it himself that back then the girls in his neighborhood treated him like some kind of zoo animal and he was sick of it. Due to that, he turns his masculine side into a facade by acting tough and making other people hate him, so he can avoid ridicule and rejection. Rather than people ridiculing and rejecting Kanji for his genuine interest and passion, he'd rather people dislike him for acting tough, so he protects himself from getting hurt. In this way, Kanji feels like he's in control of his fear of rejection. It's definitely not a healthy way to deal with his feelings. It's probably the worst way to deal with it because it leads to further complications when he grows up. Even when he was introduced to the story, he's isolated from his school and his peers. which doesn't really help him. Kanji also really desires acceptance, that's why putting up a tough guy facade and distancing himself from most people won't really help him personally. So we know his problems and his insecurities. What happens in Kanji's dungeon? Kanji's dungeon is a bathhouse, a really big bathhouse. Shadow Kanji was being portrayed as very flamboyant and suggestive. It embodies the stereotypical tropes that are associated with gay men. The shadows of the characters in Persona 4 are just the exaggerated versions of the characters' insecurities and their true feelings. So Kanji's shadow did speak from the truth about his insecurities, his fear of rejection, and his desire for acceptance. Shadow Kanji said a lot about Kanji being scared of being laughed at for his hobbies, for anyone to accept him, and the tough guy persona that Kanji puts up. These are all the truths about Kanji, and he keeps rejecting them just like all the other characters before him that had faced their shadows. After defeating Shadow Kanji, Kanji eventually accepts his shadow and accepts the part of him as the true self. So a lot of people mistook his arc about embracing his sexuality. Kanji's arc isn't about sexual orientation or anything with his repressed sexual desires. Yes, his dungeon is a steamy bathhouse and it was a game show about men only Kanji Tatsumi in a rosy steam paradise, and that he was flustered around Naoto. But that's not the point. While the dungeon itself in the game show thingy can mean that it's about sexual orientation, when Kanji's shadow was confronting him, it revealed something much deeper. Shadow Kanji was talking a lot about Kanji's fear, tough guy persona, and his desire for acceptance. These fears and desires for acceptance don't stem from just that he likes boys. It came from his peers, mainly girls, that mocked and judged him for his hobbies, and his family of having unconventional beliefs and traditional views also probably influenced his insecurities further. Kanji's arc is about accepting his true self. He doesn't need to be scared of being ridiculed for his hobbies. He even said it himself that it wasn't about men or women, and that he was just scared shitless of being made fun of. More accurately, it ain't a matter of guys and chicks. It's a matter of being rejected and ridiculed. So no, his arc isn't about his sexuality, and it doesn't really matter in the game anyways because that's not what it's about. Now we move on to Naoto. Naoto Shirogane. I haven't gone to her dungeon yet, but I did watch the Persona 4 anime, and I'm sure that the anime did a pretty good job in showing the arcs and the story properly. A lot of people mistook her for being trans or gender non-conforming, and her arc is about that. But again, it's not. Naoto was actually introduced around the time when Kanji first appeared in the game, probably a little earlier than that. She was introduced as the detective prince, and she had the appearance of a boy. First time seeing her in the anime, I just knew she was a girl from the start, because the voice clearly gave it away, but most people in the game mistook her for a boy as well. Naoto's arc is also well within the theme of truth. In terms of character, Naoto is reserved and serious. She's not one of those shy and reserved types. She's the more serious characters in Persona 4. Her role in the story before her own arc is mostly that she was trying to find out the killer of the serial killing case in Inaba. She asked Kanji about it. Later on, she went for the investigation team to investigate the killings. All the characters that had interacted with her thought that the Detective Prince title was literal. They thought that Naoto was a boy. From her looks, she wears that detective cap, wears male clothing, and has no visible signs that she was a girl. I think she also tried to work with the police department in Inaba and with Dojima as well, because his superiors employed Naoto to assist him in investigating the case. Though this action greatly disturbs Dojima, and he was sort of annoyed at Naoto when trying to help in investigating the case. Naoto is actually a great asset in investigating the case because, well, she's got the smarts for a detective and she made great calls to help the investigation team in solving the case. Now, let's get into her insecurities and the problems that she is facing. There is a reason why Naoto is dressing up and acting like a boy in this story. If you actually read, pay attention, and really understand it well. Naoto's struggles and insecurities are correlated to the sexism in male-dominated fields. Naoto, when she was little, she admired her grandfather and her parents. Their family was a line of detectives. Her grandfather was a really great detective, so she admired and wanted to be a detective because of her grandfather, basically. She said it herself that she wasn't really great at making friends, so she would spend time just reading detective novels in her grandfather's study. Well, given her personality to be serious and rigid, it's very likely that a lot of people would not like her as a friend. Although she does desire for friendship and a sense of belonging, she was a pretty lonely character before the investigation team took her in. Naoto struggled a lot internally because she was bound by labels and stereotypes that compromised her identity and sense of relations. She ended up losing herself within her age group and gender, even to go as far as losing genuine passion she has as a detective because of that title. She became isolated and sheltered from others. She became a workaholic for her job, and she became insecure of her age and gender. She lost and forgot her true feelings about being an ideal detective, even actively ignoring them. To compensate for this, she seeks acknowledgement. Naoto's desire to become an ideal detective were closely tied with people's prejudice towards her age. It later turned into an insecurity of her gender. Naoto in turn wishes to be looked at and treated as an adult, because she doesn't like being treated like a child by the police force and being looked down upon, as she fears that no one will take her seriously as a female in this male-dominated occupation. Naoto had endured a lot in regards to her age, which led to her being self-conscious of her gender, trying to balance it with the ideal image of a detective. In response to this, Naoto disguised herself as a male from an age young enough to fool the people around her. So in Naoto's dungeon, her dungeon seemed to look like an industrial-style laboratory. Shadow Naoto was seen to be preparing something like an operation table, and that operation table was revealed to be a body-altering operation. The operation table looked like that How It Feels to Chew 5-Gum video from 12 years ago. So when Shadow Naoto was confronting Naoto, she said a lot about the insecurities and the inferiority she felt about Naoto's age and gender. Her shadow pressed on a lot about things like that Naoto is just a child and that she won't be taken seriously, that she was lonely, that Naoto wants to become a man and she can't ever become a strong man like the detective she admired in those novels, and she can't overcome the gender barriers. Shadow Naoto symbolizes Naoto's conflict with age and gender expectations, insecurity over being taken seriously, and her desired transformation. This pressing from her shadow did come from Naoto's insecurities and fears, but they are exaggerated and distorted. Naoto rejects that Shadow Naoto was herself, but eventually after the shadow was defeated, she accepts it. People mistook this as something like a transgender journey, or that she does not want to conform to the gender norms, therefore she's a transgender or non-binary. Her arc explores a topic that is very different from what the people misinterpret it as. Shadow Naoto did express that she wanted to become a male and desires for the transformation to become a male. Yes, shadows are the character's deepest insecurities and fears, but it does not mean that Naoto desires to be seen and accepted as a male or not conforming to a gender. That idea of wanting to become a male and wanting transformation is an exaggerated idea of her rejecting her true self. Much of her troubles stem from her having no reason to be who she truly is. As Naoto confronted her own shadow, she and Yukiko said it herself, that her wish isn't to become an adult man, is to accept herself for who she really is. The title of the detective became a burden to Naoto. Her dreams to become a detective really gave Naoto the false idea that all she is a detective and nothing else. She lost her true self in pursuing that dream, and her arc concludes that what she wanted all along is to be accepted and be proud for who she truly is, nothing more and nothing less. The journeys of Kanji and Naoto in Persona 4 are powerful explorations of the theme truth, learning to accept one's true self in the face of societal expectations and personal insecurities. Kanji confronts his fear of rejection and embraces his true identity. Naoto also the same, as she embraces and accepts her true self. However, many people misinterpret their arcs, misunderstanding Kanji's struggles with masculinity and Naoto's gender identity issues. It's crucial to understand these characters' arcs properly, as misreading their experiences not only distorts their growth, but also undermines the deeper message of Persona 4. Also, to not make a commotion online of completely failing to understand and making things out to be what they're not. It is not about sexuality and gender identity. It's about truth, facing and accepting who you truly are. That is all. I'll see ya.